I had friends that were really into music. And then I moved to New York, and then I was by New York City. And then being in New York, I met a lot of friends who were into music, and then my world just got wider and wider.
Welcome to The Creative Asylum, a weekly podcast that digs deep into the minds of visionary creators of all stripes. Musicians, actors, filmmakers, writers, artists, cartoonists, and cultural disruptors. Here, we'll discuss perspectives on living life on your own terms. Life lessons that keep us grounded and sane, and sometimes pull us back from the edge. So, take a deep breath, loosen your grip on the bland and the boring. This is your weekly prescription for authentic living, creative clarity, and hopefully, a little bit of cultural rebellion.
Side effects may include spontaneous joy, existential epiphanies, and an uncontrollable urge to do weird and beautiful things.
Welcome to the Creative Asylum. This is a weekly podcast where me, your host, Daniel House, founder and bass player of Skinyard and owner of CZ Records, I don't even like the word interview, have conversations with different creative people every week. Because we're just getting started right now, it's primarily just musicians, but eventually we're also going to have actors, film directors, artists, cartoonists, pretty much you name it. If somebody's doing something creative and they're interesting, I want them on the show. Today's episode, our third one, if you can believe that, is with Lori Barbero, formerly the drummer in the band Babes in Toyland. If you don't know them, they were fierce and ferocious and awesome. And I'm really happy to have Lori on the show because she's just one of my favorite people. She's got great stories. She's done just so many different things and has just a great perspective on life, a great commitment to just staying true to herself and living authentically. And this is a great conversation. So if you're new, as always, ask you to like this, ask you to subscribe, leave a comment below if you like it. This particular episode, we had some real problems with audio. So if you're listening to this on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you tend to listen to your podcasts, you might want to go over to YouTube. And that channel is Creative Asylum CA, the letter CA, because where there are audio issues there, you should be able to put up the closed captioning and you can hear it where the audio falters a little bit. Anyway, this is a great conversation. Stick around, watch it over on YouTube. Here it is, Lori Barbero. Hi, Lori.
Hello.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it. And I'm excited. And I don't have anything really prepared per se because I've known you for a long time. And this can just go so many directions. I have so many questions I want to ask you all at the same time. And, the thing is, like, you have led an incredibly storied life, I think. I think you've had an amazing set of experiences. You're one of the people that have kind of a remarkable ability to recall things. Like, you have a good memory. And a lot of people I talk to don't necessarily, right? So it's great because you have all these stories and you're really good at telling them. So I guess the first thing I'm thinking about is I think of you and I think of like rock and roll. And then I just think of like you in high school where you were in New York and all the people you were getting to hang out with and the clubs you were seeing and the bands you were seeing. And then the fact that at one point you went back to Minneapolis at a time when this whole other scene was exploding as well. So you've had these amazing experiences that have very much been at the right time, at the right place. And so I guess I want to talk a little bit about your time in New York in high school. And I'm just wondering if you think those influences were a big part of why you just were so embedded in your entire life with music, or if that would have happened regardless of where you were.
Well, my mother, we had a console stereo when I was growing up in our house.
Yeah.
And there was always either a record spinning, which was usually 90% of the time, or a radio on. But that was usually just in the car. So I just heard a lot of music when I was young, and I thought it was
Yeah.
really. And to be quite honest, I thought when I was really, really young, I thought that all of these songs would be playing. I didn't really understand the concept of records, so I thought that they had. Well, I guess back in the day they did. They had the band set up in the studio, and they would play songs live, and they go over you know, over
Right.
the wires. But and so I was really into music because my mom really loved music. My dad kind of did. He had other things he was more interested in, but and then we moved to New York. I actually knew quite a few people when I was in junior high school that really liked music also. So we went to shows that were at the lakes.
So
So
this is before New York.
this is before New York.
Right.
Yeah, this is Minnesota. Growing up, and then I had friends that were really into music, and then I moved to New York, and then I was by New York City, and then being in New York, I met a lot of friends who were into music, and then my world just got wider and wider. They mostly liked. I was in Pearl River, New York, but just like it's the first exit out of New York once you go over the George Washington Bridge.
So you could hop on a train really fast and just be in the middle of it.
I was a rocker chick that just drove like Lorio Andretti.
Okay.
And and so then they liked, we'd go and see at Rockland Community College. We would see Marcia Tucker Band, Charlie Daniels Band, Leonard Skinner. Gosh, who else do we see? Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, and he didn't live too far from me. So I saw him actually a lot too, as friends of friends. But then I started going to the cities, and then I just started going to where all the fun was. So I ended up in the village, and then that's where I really got into. I was still in high school, and I was going into New York City by myself.
Yeah.
Take a train or drive in, and then that's when I just got into the really cool scene because growing up, I always liked the solo folks because I was always kind of solo. I wasn't
Uh-huh.
really in a large group of people a lot until I really moved out to New York. And then I met new people, and then I started going to the city. And then it seems like, I'm thinking about it now, it seems like the more I broaden my horizons, like going to New York City, then people in Pearl River who don't live that far from there, but they're just kids are like, I'd like to go there. I mean, like, what was it? What'd you do? And like, oh, it's cool. Oh, I was from Minneapolis, which was a city, and so this small town, one high school, Pearl River, I needed to leave and flee it once in a while. So I went to the big city. And then that's where I just really got into it. I mean, I met really interesting people. I saw interesting people. I didn't even know how cool St. Mark's was or CBGB or.
Right. You were just there.
I just was there. That's where I just
But
was.
what was it that brought you to that specific place as opposed to, I don't know, somewhere else?
Well, New York City, because I was just not very far away. I just went
Okay.
but I just was kind of like, oh, I'd walk around. I would walk for hours. On weekends, I would just walk and walk and walk. And
Which is what's so cool about New York, right?
it
So you
was
could just do
cool.
that.
You'd
Yeah.
find, but then you would just follow the interesting, cool people, and all roads led to the village,
Mhm.
and that just became the place that I just liked going a lot, and was way more interesting than Pearl River.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
You
you were
know,
hanging out with like CBs and all those bands. We're talking the 1970s, like
we are talking.
in the middle, because you and I are, I'm pretty sure, like the same age. I think you and I are just like a few months apart in age. But you were like ground zero of one of the most incredible scenes that was happening in New York at that time, like in America, really. It seems like.
But I didn't know it then. It's just
Yeah, yeah, sure.
it was just there, and
It's just where you were.
yeah, I would hang out at all these little different places and just run around and ate a slice of pizza, and then that was my meal of the day, and it was delicious and cool, and I don't know. And I still would kind of just hang up on myself. I didn't really ever go. When I went to bigger concerts like at Madison Square Garden,
Mhm.
my high school friends, Jack Pisano, Donnie McIntyre, Steve Salo, We'd all go to, we saw David Bowie at Madison Square Garden in
Nice.
'96. We saw Queen. Both of those two, they're still my all-time favorites.
Really?
That concert, I mean, Queen, no one can touch it's like Queen, David Bowie, and Prince.
I've seen two of those three. I never got to see Queen.
Yeah, so they're my three. Freddie Mercury, I mean, just the band, all of them.
Yeah.
I still listen to them, and I still can get goosebumps.
So were you attending like large arena type shows more back then, or were you spending more time in smaller, or just both?
Both, yeah. But I probably went to more smaller places and hung out because back in the '70s they didn't charge you either.
Uh-huh.
You know, you could just walk into anywhere, and they just didn't card you. And I think it was probably 18 anyway, but I was probably 16 when I started going around. No, 15, 16. It's crazy. I was going.
Were your parents at all freaked out that you were like going to the city of light, or there was like it was cool?
And I mean, we probably talked about it, but I didn't really have any. There were no holds. My dad was never around, and my mom didn't ask any questions. She was just
and you weren't getting in trouble, right? So you were just having a good time.
then I wasn't getting in trouble by my parents or trouble from going to the cities. I really wasn't getting in trouble. I drank more with the locals in Pearl River. We'd go to the Hill at the middle school,
Right.
Go back there. The Hill was actually in high school, and then the park was behind the middle school, and that's where we'd hang out and drink.
So what were some of the bands you were seeing? And I mean, not the big bands, but the smaller club bands. And what were some of the people you were spending time with?
Gosh. Well, the one that really stands out, I saw Patti Smith on New Year's. I think it was New Year's of either 76 going into 77, 77 going into 78. I have the ticket stub, but I can't remember the dates. Because, that right now is what, 50 years?
Isn't that weird? It's so strange.
I remember, but that was at CBGBs. Was connected to it. It was like the little cafe or the little theaters connected to it, and I saw Patti Smith there.
And was it a band, or was it poetry, or is it a mix of both?
Patti Smith band.
Okay, wow.
And it was really great and phenomenal, and I loved Patti Smith. Even I get to see her in the '70s, and so she's pretty damn cool.
She still is.
She still is.
Right?
Always has just what you see is what you get. I just really like the fact that she was very androgynous and just cool. Like she did not care.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like how I've always just lived my life. I mean, it was like, oh, really? I just wear like cotton t-shirts and leggings or jeans and, I never really wore pretty cute little dresses and high heels and curled my hair and wore makeup. Lipstick.
Right.
Yeah, that's about it. But, just that simple life. And I admired her. But then at that show, I actually looked it up probably about 6 or 7 months ago. Bruce Springsteen came out on stage. And they did.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty great. But I read about it because it's online. I realized there's things that I can question in my mind. I'm like, let me Google it. I don't think that way, but I looked it up. There's an article, and there was a riot, and the police came in, and it was just pretty crazy because people and he wasn't really that huge. It's when Jungle Land came out, starting to get big, but it was just like, whoa, Patti Smith, and he was pretty lit. I remember that. I was lit, but he was really lit. It was fun. I mean, it was a small venue.
It's such an amazing historic snapshot.
And I have the ticket. I had the T-shirt, but I recently sold it because it was it was just so old, and you don't want to keep washing it because it just shrinks.
Yeah. Like, are you still friends with any of the people that you got to know in New York from those times?
There was some that I was friends with, and I know that I had to have like hung out with Thurston and him, like all those guys because they're right there. But, to be honest, I just don't remember them. It was more because they were probably, just more in the shadows too, like myself. I knew Johnny Thunders. He was really cool. Alan Vega, I'd see a lot, and Martin Rev. They kind of would run around in the same circles, and they were out a lot.
Yeah.
Because, they were just out a lot. And I remember those guys, and after I graduated from high school, I went to Key West, Florida for a couple of years, and then I
Right.
went back to Minneapolis, but I had to leave, and so I went back to New York City and lived on the Upper East Side, and then that's when it was really great. That was 81. I was
Okay.
there 82. That was super great. That's where I hung out at like the Rock Lounge and Danceteria. Lived on the Upper East Side, and there was a guy who lived across the street from me, and he was a really famous actor, and I didn't know much about him, so I didn't see the movies he was in. But he kind of took me under his wing, and he wasn't creepy at all.
Huh.
But knew that I loved. I worked at Bloomingdale's. I sold Mark Cross desk accessories, and I was in the station. But Lau Wagner was one of my guys that could come in a lot. Anyways, so I meet this guy, and he would be like, "Oh, I'd tell him I walked down to the village, and sometimes he'd leg down one of the horse and carriages
Uh-huh.
and he'd pay for it to go on." And this man's name was Lawrence Tierney,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
he was Dillinger in the movie Dillinger. He was also in Lawrence of Arabia, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He was a big time actor, but he was an older man, and he wasn't being creepy to me.
Right. Right.
He just thought I was a cool kid, and I went over, and I think I still have his card with his, and I found that recently. I have a script, one of the movies that he was in, he gave me because he had a pile of them. He really liked magazines, he had scripts, and his house, there was enough room to just like walk. There's an aisle, and then there was just paper up like 6 feet tall, this entire place. So
I had to look him up while you're talking. So I guess he died in 2002. Yeah, I mean, I know him from a number of his movies.
Just met him, and he was just this guy who was in
Right.
these movies, and he never talked about it. I actually found out later after the fact. But he was just a nice man, and we'd sit and chat, in the park where we lived, and he would give me $20 and say, "But something, go get a slice of pizza and Coca-Cola or whatever."
Right. Right.
He
So
knew I was
how long were you in New York this second time? Like a couple of years?
like a couple of years.
And you got back to Minneapolis around 83, something like 83, 84?
82, 80, no, like 82.
Okay.
And the 82, I don't really know.
Yeah.
And
Somewhere back there.
Take pictures. I didn't take pictures until I went back to Minneapolis. That's when I really got into taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I missed all of New York City in the 70s. I have a few from Key West, Florida, from disposable cameras. And then New York City, moving back, I didn't take pictures either. A few, like when Joan Jett played at, I can't remember where she played, on in Mission of Burma. We became fast friends.
You and who?
Peter Prescott from Mission of Burma.
Yeah.
Met him at, what was the name of that place? I can't remember.
God, Signals, Calls, and Marches is still one of my favorite records from like 81.
But,
that EP that Mission of Burma put out.
Well, oh yeah.
It's just the one with Revolver on it.
Yep.
Still, it's like, it's like almost 45 years old, and it's still just amazing.
I didn't know. I'd never heard of them, but I met him.
Mm-hmm.
It was very nice. Then I started getting into all the other stuff. I saw ESG play. I saw so many bands play. The original Rockettes. That's when I met my friend Danny B. Harvey.
Awesome.
I'm still friends with, and he was Wanda Jackson's guitar player, and Nancy Sinatra, and he played in the Head Cat with Lemmy till he passed.
Mm-hmm.
With Slim Jim Phantom, and he's married to Jerry Lee Lewis's niece, to Gail Lewis's daughter, Annie.
So when you got back to Minneapolis,
yep.
Who were the bands that were just starting to bubble up at that point in time?
Well, before I went, I had worked at the Longhorn, so that's where I saw the Suburbs, Suicide Commandos, Husker Du, the Replacements. Tommy was 14.
He was 14 when the Replacements started?
Yeah, 14.
Wow, that's wild.
Lydia Lunch.
Mm-hmm. And you're still friends with Lydia, right?
Yep, I am.
Yeah, I was on her podcast a while ago. Sure. I was kind of scared at first because she's always so kind of intense and intimidating. I'm like, what's this going to be like? And she was and it was fine. She was sweet.
You're so not afraid of her that you just want to get out with her.
Right, yeah. But her performance is like, it's intense, right?
she's quite diverse. She
Yeah.
sings one of my favorite songs of all time, Death Valley 69.
Which
You
one?
know, Sonic Youth, Death Valley
Oh
69.
yes, yes. Oh my God, yes. Yeah, that recording is astounding.
A version of Some Velvet Morning with Roland S. Howard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time too.
Of all time.
Yep, of all time.
So you even then still though you landed like in Minneapolis and you were kind of once again ground zero
Yep,
at a club where so much of the upcoming rock was all happening
yep.
in the very earliest days of that whole punk rock scene.
First Avenue a million times, and Prince was always around.
Yeah.
But I saw him when I was young because I grew up in South Minneapolis, and I only lived a couple blocks from Jimmy Harris, Jimmy Jam, and I went to junior high school with Jimmy Harris, who's Jimmy Jam,
Okay.
Jimmy Harris and Terry Lewis and Mark Brown Mark, who was in Prince's band. Prince ran around with all of, they were in the same circle and stuff.
So he was playing in Minneapolis in the 70s, right?
Yeah, probably, but I probably didn't
Or
see
mostly
him
in the 80s.
like 80. I saw Flight Time. They were called Flight Time, and that's what Jimmy Jam. They're called Flight Time, but their band was Flight Time. They were like the first black band that I think I saw in like 1980 at First Avenue. Or it was actually 7th Street Entry.
Right. I always forget which is the big one, which is the small one.
First Avenue is the big one.
So the entry is where we played in 80, whatever it was. I don't know.
Yeah. It's on 7th Street and First Avenue. That's the address.
Is it still there?
Yep.
Wow, amazing. And they're still doing live music?
Oh, yeah. Now they're a monopoly. They own a whole bunch of places.
Right. So at this point, we'll get to your time being the rock star drummer that you are. At this point, were you thinking at all about how cool it would be to like be in a band, or was that really even in your consciousness yet?
The idea was quite enchanting.
Yeah.
I daydream. I'd love to be in a band, but I always watched the drummer. I always liked the drummers.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't really. My heart wasn't set on it because I just had so much fun being in the pro of every show.
Sure.
Don't fix it if it's not broken. I'm fine.
You still get to be swimming in the pool, right?
Seeing every single show that came to First Avenue and 7th Street Entry. I was there 7 nights a week.
Wow.
7 nights a week for probably 8, 9, 10 years. I don't know, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, yeah.
And what were you doing during this time? You weren't working at Longhorns the whole time, right?
No, the Longhorn was done in 81.
Okay, so early.
That's when I moved back to New York because, Babe started in 87.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was probably for 7 years, I think I was downtown 7 nights a week. And I worked downtown also. And I made sure that I would get off work early.
Were you managing any bands at this point yet? I know you've kind of done it all. You've had a record label, you've managed bands, you've played in music.
There was a band from Minneapolis called Final Conflict, and I managed them. And the singer was my boyfriend, and Bob Mould produced their record.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, Discord maybe is re-releasing it. In which I'm like, I thought they only did DC bands, but I don't know. The bass player reached out to me and said, "You took this picture." I said, "Yeah," and he said that they're re-releasing it. So
at some point, I'll have to talk to Ian because he's a great conversation anyway. But I am curious if he only does DC. It kind of makes sense, but I feel like somewhere in the mix that he's done bands that weren't. But I'm not sure. And later, you managed like Run Rusty One, didn't you?
Yep.
Or am I mistaken?
About 85. 87, and then our band, and then Babe started, and then that was all I could handle. I couldn't.
Sure.
Babes, I couldn't do it. Run Westy Run too.
Well, let's talk about Babes because that's probably what a lot of people want to hear. Although, actually, wait, let's hold off on Babes because I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you about being a disco champion.
Oh yeah, disco. First Avenue. Uncle Sam's, and then they dropped the Uncle. Then it was just Sam's. But in the 70s, when I was super young, I moved out to New York in 8th grade. My best friend and next door neighbor, Mary Bell Nordberg, her brother Andy was a disco dancer, and he taught me how to dance. And we would go down to First Avenue and we'd compete.
Like full on, like Saturday Night Live kind of environment.
Oh yeah,
the lights and the floors and everything.
The one-piece dance skin.
Yeah.
With a wraparound skirt.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Black shoes with a buckle that went over the top, like heels.
And did you like do some competition and like win the whole thing?
What are you? Maybe 15? 14 probably because I graduated when I was 17. So yeah, I was like 14 probably. Maybe.
I love that. I love that as like an aside, It's just kind of a fun little.
Yeah, it was really fun. They used to have an elevated light up dance floor. All the squares were different colors.
Right.
You would just dance on that, and we were so cool.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video, leave a comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. It's the quickest way to grow our channel, and it's absolutely free. You can also subscribe to our other channels on social media. Check out our Instagram at Creative Asylum CA, that's the letter CA, or on TikTok at The Creative Asylum, that's all one word. Our website is thecapod.com, and our Facebook profile is the same, facebook.com/thecapod. All right, back to the episode. So, okay, 87, you meet Kat, and...
I met Kat in 85.
85, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the band didn't start till 87?
And the band started in 87.
Right. And you started playing drums and were just kind of a natural, like out of the gate.
Yep, in 87 we started, I guess, someone told me we started in August of 87. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I have no idea.
Do you remember when your first show was? As Babes in Toyland?
It was at some party in the warehouse district.
Okay. Was it just the three of you, or were there other people in the band at first?
No, yeah, it was Kat, myself. The singer her name was Cindy, and the bass player was named Chris.
Okay.
Cindy was terminated, then Chris quit. And then we found Kat went to vocals and guitar, and then Michelle really got the rest is history.
It's some pretty amazing history. So, okay, so let's see. You started in 87. Your first record didn't come out till 1990. You and I connected somewhere in that interim.
Yeah,
I think.
Uptown Bar.
Is that how we met? Was because you were booking the Uptown and you booked us?
I was a server and I hung out. I went to every show there too.
Okay, so you didn't book us? I thought you booked us.
I could have.
I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
I wasn't the booking agent at the Uptown Theater though. It was Maggie McPherson, but
okay.
I thought of hooking up. But what I could have done was I loved your record and I told Maggie.
Right.
Or some, I do that a lot. I put my potion on them and they would do what I say. So it could have happened that way, but Maggie McPherson booked the Uptown Bar and Chrissy Dunlap booked First Avenue.
The name Maggie McPherson kind of is triggering something in my brain, so maybe that was it. So, but that's when I first met you, was at the Uptown when we played there. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember much about the show, but in my brain, it's like, that was a really fun show. I think it was, yeah. Not that it matters, but I'm wondering why from when you first started playing it took like 3 years or 2.5 years, whatever, before you finally recorded a record.
Probably because no one would touch us because we were wild screamers.
Yeah.
We didn't start till the fall of 87. Mm-hmm. So we, in 88, we were probably full blown, and we toured. We toured with White Zombie and Detroitson.
Before having a record out?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So when I think about Babes, like, it seems to me that was a band where everything that could have happened right happened from the very beginning. I mean, touring with Detroitson and White Zombie before even a record is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And
I put up a lot of bands, and Detroitson were one of they played Basement probably in 84.
Mm-hmm. I love that band. They were so great.
They played in my basement, and we are still friends. I talk to them, see this one, talk to that one. And we saw Eric, because Eric works at he was the chef at the Amsterdam. What is it called?
But you had those tours. Your first record came out on Twin Tone, right? Which was a pretty big deal. And shortly after that first record, you were on tour in Europe with Sonic Youth.
Yep.
Which is just, again, every step of the way just is kind of amazing, And it's so great.
No regrets.
No regret. So I was listening in preparation of this, I'm like, all right, I haven't listened to Babes for a while, so I have to listen to all the records again. I was reminded how even from like the very first time I ever heard you guys and seeing Kat, she's this tiny little thing, looks innocuous enough at first glance,
Yes.
and she gets up there and this just explosion of intensity just comes out of her throat, and you're like, whoa! It reminds me in a very weird way of like Pat Benatar, like teeny tiny, and then you hear how she sings, and it's kind of the same with Kat. You're like, oh my God, like that's somebody you don't want to mess with.
Yeah.
And there's just such an incredible, it's so primal, it's almost feral.
The whole band is being pretty primal. We're just she's underrated as a guitar player. I mean,
Yeah, I just think that whole, like, I think you just tapped into something so organically, and I think that's maybe part of why just everything hit out of the gate for you guys.
what
It's
I
pretty.
loved about her was that she really didn't care that I'd never played drums before. She just is like, we'll just play. And so
Hmm.
I would just get together and then Michelle too, but her and I were doing it, with Chris and Cindy. And she would just start playing and I'd play along with her and
Right.
we change at the same time. And it was just super weird. And then it would just end at the same time and we'd look at each other and we'd boisterously start laughing because
Uh-huh.
it wasn't anything that was written. We would just do it. And it was really fucking weird.
You have that telepathy.
Well, we're both Sagittarius too. Our
Okay.
birthdays 2 weeks apart from each other.
Yeah, where was it that I saw some, I think it was some video online where you're like, my name's Lloyd, I'm a Sagittarius. My name's Maureen, and I.
Oh, yeah,
Whose idea was that?
I don't know.
Maybe that's why we get along, because I'm a Leo, so we're all fire signs.
Yep, but Kat didn't really care that I wasn't like this super, whatever. I don't even know. I just played along with her, and she played
Yeah.
along with me because I'd have ideas, and we were like two peas in a pod.
It's kind
So
of hard to imagine that band with a different drummer. I don't know. Like it's so much part of the power. It's so propulsive, especially with like DIY and punk rock. And I feel like so many people start bands having never necessarily played,
mhm.
and they just start playing, and that's you start at the beginning, whatever your beginning is, and that's how you learn. Some people it just clicks like that. I think you're one of those people. The second Skinny drummer, Scott, probably who you saw at first, I think. He was in one band before us, and he joined that band having never played. And it was the same kind of thing. He just kind of like, it didn't take very long before he understood his instrument in the way that he understood it. And I feel like it's the same as with you. So I want to talk a little bit about Kat,
Mhm.
and you can say as much or as little as you want to say. I know she's not doing really well, and I know that I mean, you have such a deep history with her, creatively, personally. I assume for you, she's basically like kind of a soul sister with you. And I know that on some level, probably a lot of the hassles with the band breaking up and getting back together and breaking up again probably has something to do with her and her state now. And I just wonder what if you want to talk about anything about all of that with Kat, what's going on now, or I don't know. Like you and I have talked about it aside. We both lost people to addiction. I have a mother who is an addict. She didn't die that way, but I grew up with that. So this has always been kind of a point for me of just there's so many creative people that end up getting into whatever it is, whether it's alcohol or drugs or this or that. And, I always wonder what it is about that. If it's like a refuge or if it's to enhance or like maybe it's different reasons for different people. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I really don't know because I'm not in their head, but I think a lot of artists think that it goes hand in hand. Because I know, well, first of all, Kat's like my sister. I love her. Different relationship with her now than I did when we were touring all the time. Still, I talked to her yesterday briefly. I still care about her, and if she knows that I love her. She loves me. We always tell each other every time we talk. Really, it's a good relationship. Her years of addiction has taken a toll on her. Very sad. She's outlived all the other ones that we've toured with,
Right.
and so it's pretty crazy.
Was she also born same year that you and that we were?
She's going to be 62 on December 9th.
Okay.
And she's been using since before I met her.
Really? Wow. So it just has all caught up essentially.
I mean, even if it has quit and she's
Mhm.
been, her body has taken
Right.
control.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
come back, what can't I do now? Talking with really nice conversation.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good, we really, it makes me really happy because it wasn't like that for years.
Yeah, I know some fucked up shit went on with you guys at some point.
Yeah, but see, I've learned, I just let go, and I'm like, it's not gonna be around forever, so I just know what to do and what not to do.
Right.
That I've done since the get-go, that I quit doing because I can't keep giving and giving and giving for 40 years and back to that.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let things be as they are and you have to walk away.
But I adore her.
Yeah.
I respect her.
And she's a hell of a creative force, right?
Yep. Nothing lasts forever. So.
Yeah. Something I really admire about you is that you have always just followed your instinct and your passion, be it music or other things. You've just always done the thing that you wanted to do that felt right. And I think a lot of people want to do things and then they don't. And I'm just, I have this whole dialogue about whether like just aren't innately creative and so that's not a thing, or if everybody kind of has a piece of that, or if it has more to do with expectations of what they're supposed to do as opposed to what they want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that everyone can do what they want to do, but I just think some people don't have the true passion. The idea is really delicious. They can't create it and serve it. Like the idea, like there's a lot of people that have been in bands and they are not in bands for the right reason. They really do it because it's cool, or they just do it because they think they're going to get rich. They just do it for the wrong reasons. I did it because I love music. I love music, and I love people. What's the bet? What could be any cooler than being in a rock band?
True. And you got to do it entirely on your own terms. So that was actually something I was thinking about, how like you went from a pretty respected indie, Twin Tone, and then you got signed by Reprise, right, which is a Warner affiliate, and you got to do it in a way that so many bands don't get to do it, which is maintaining absolute total creative control and freedom. We've all seen so many bands that have like been on an indie, get signed, put out a record, they get produced. It's clear that the label doesn't understand who they are as a band, puts out a record that doesn't really feel like them, and the label doesn't really know what to do with them. And, and then the band just kind of falls apart and breaks apart. And I feel like you guys just got to be you. You got to be Babes in Toyland and do it on your own terms. And I think that's such an important part of why you had these records, and you didn't suddenly sound like this slick produced record, or like some producer for Nine Inch Nails was suddenly doing a Babes in Toyland record, like, and I've always appreciated that, because I think so many bands get lured in by like the fame or the money and forget about how important it is to sort of maintain your own vision creatively as a band.
We don't like to be told what to do or how to do it. That's that. It's like basically rolling back to like Patti Smith. What you see is what you get. There's no sugar.
Right. Exactly.
We don't, flutter our eyelashes, to get $1, and then, no, if you don't like it, leave.
And I assume you still live your life that way, even if you're not in a band, right?
Yeah.
You should.
Well, even as I will be receiving AARP in the next,
ARP. I was thinking of starting a band with a bunch of like old dudes and calling it the AARPUNX. What do you think? You want to be the drummer? Want to come out to San Diego and play some gigs as the AAR punks? Be fun, right? We'll play a few gigs. We'll go in the studio, release a record, and then we can retire.
And then we collect our Social Security.
Yeah, the rock star Social Security, right? You get a 6-pack of beer and $20 a week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Creative Asylum. A quick favor before you go. If you liked this conversation, please be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 10. You can find us on Instagram and on YouTube at Creative Asylum CA. That's Creative Asylum and the letters CA. Our website is thecapod.com. And our Facebook is the same, facebook.com/thecapod. Until next week, when we'll have a new conversation with another creative disruptor, stay creative in life and at work.